So over 7 years ago I played Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, and this was, funny enough, the first time I played through a single player video game, whereas before I would only really play multiplayer games or not play through an entire story, and I knew how much I loved this game and it still sits in my top 5 favourite single player games, but because it's been so long I thought it was time to not only play through it again, but also do a 2024 review, and this time it's the PC version with higher frames and improved graphics. So here we are. I'll be starting off with the story and narrative, where you play as the protagonist Nathan Drake, starting the game in the St. Francis Boys Home, an orphanage where Nathan stays at for a few years after the passing of Cassandra Morgan, his mother, and her cause of death isn't really looked into in the game, we just know it's from an illness. Nathan's father also left him shortly after her passing, leaving just Nathan and his brother Sam at the orphanage. Now him and Sam were actually separated in the orphanage due to Sam being kicked out because he committed various crimes, and basically Nathan is told by Sam that he'll be gone for a year to build up money. This is so Nathan can be discharged from the orphanage, and that is the whole starting point of the game where the brothers begin their adventure. Nathan is now out of the orphanage and the game jumps forward in time 20 whole years to Nathan and Sam in prison, which they actually bribed themselves into intentionally with the help of Sully, who I'll talk about later, and they do this so that they can team up with one of the guards called Vargas to help them search a cell tower which basically has clues to the treasure of Nathan Avery. Now they bribe him because the only way to get to the tower was through the prison, but they've agreed to give him a cut of the money they'll find, and of course I won't say what happens later on, and that's where the game's adventure really does kick off, and the entire plot of the game is finding this long lost treasure. Now Nathan as a character is great and so charismatic. I was gonna say he gives off this energy that he's just your everyday guy and friend, but this is really because he is. As for the years prior to the journey you follow, he was pretty much done with the whole exploring and travelling the world, and he was ready to settle down as a family and have a job as a deep sea salvager, which you actually do some stuff in the game, still sticking to the whole treasure hunting theme I suppose, but nothing massive compared to his other adventures. But the whole story of the game is his final adventure, and basically to finish what he started by finding this treasure alongside his brother Sam. And that's another aspect that makes this game's story so good, because we always see this strong relationship flow throughout it all, and this is between not just Sam but also Sully and Nathan's wife Elena. Now Sully is basically the father figure of Nathan and Sam, who has worked alongside them for a long time and joins them on this mission. Overall I think this story works so well because it's not so complex. It has quite a small cast of main characters, a trio of Nathan, Sam and Sully, and then Elena alongside, with the two antagonists who try to stop them from reaching the treasure by getting there before them and intervening. Therefore you know eventually they'll clash multiple times, and the location of this treasure they think it is at will change multiple times based on the clues for both of the sides. And these two antagonists are Rafe Adler and Nadine Ross, who work basically as a duo but also go separately sometimes without saying too much, and themselves as a character aren't really anything massive, as in they're kind of down to earth in a way, and just like Nathan and his crew, they're just ordinary people who are also in the need of this treasure. So the plot and the story is quite easy to follow, and it's quite hard to say what is bad about it. The pacing is great in my opinion. Some could say because it's so simple, it can be quite predictable, like moving from location to location with each clue saying to go somewhere else, as well as the clashes with the villains who both meet up at the same place. But to be honest, that's probably what makes the game so likeable, as there's not an awful lot to be messed up. It's quite a safe game, as in like The Last of Us Part 2 where there's multiple perspectives played out but you play the exact same timeline twice, then having a huge amount of characters and a deep revenge story. That is quite complex, whereas this is quite a straightforward plot with a light-hearted telling of the relationship between a minimal cast, similar to Tomb Raider, but Uncharted does this type of story the best, making it great to play years on end, just like I did. In terms of the gameplay and the gunplay, it's another area that also isn't so crazy, but works incredibly well. There's lots of scripted scenes implemented in there, usually the turning point where you'll go into a chase scene or a puzzle or a fight. I think it helps again with the pacing of the game, because you know whenever you enter a new area, eventually something big and sometimes over the top will happen later on, and there's always something big going on, unlike a low point where the game starts to drag or there'll be a filler mission. This is because it's an action adventure. The only time where there isn't action or a big scripted moment, you'll most likely be exploring this beautiful world with such a variety of biomes and locations to visit, which I'll talk more about later, and it's basically up to you how deep you want to explore and take in the moment as you traverse, with the incredible parkour mechanics as well, which is one of the standout moments for me, especially when I first played the game back in 2016. Funny enough, it was actually before I played any of the Assassin's Creed games, so having these great parkour mechanics was so new to me and I loved every second of it, and I still do now because you're always on the move and progressing forward through each area as you follow the story. There's very few times when you'll just be walking, and that's clear because there isn't even a sprint feature in the game. It's basically either roll or jump because there's more focus on the parkour, driving and the scripted scenes, unlike an open world game of course. And in these locations there's loot you can find, like the treasure collectibles, which are various artifacts hidden for those who like collecting, as well as other items Nathan can look closer into as you interact with them, and sometimes he'll journal a landmark or item as he talks about it. That's also one of my favourite parts of the gameplay. Just the dialogue between Nathan and Sam is so good as you play, and so comforting as they butt in with comedic lines and wittiness between them both just works so well, and it just shows that relationship. Here are actually some of my personal favourites.
Well, give it a pull.
What? Could be a trap.
You're already in there. What's the worst that could happen?
I lose my hand?
So we'll get you a nice hook. Give it a pull. Where would you be without me, huh?
Probably at home. Drinking hot cocoa? What are you, 5? Oh, tell me you wouldn't go for some hot cocoa right now.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
Hi. How are you?
Ciao.
Would you focus? Sam, you good?
Yeah, these pants are just a little bit too tight.
Yeah, well, that's the style these days.
Really? Oh, when in Rome.
Nah, because we're in Italy. I get it.
All right, I'm gonna head back to the ballroom.
And the game is just filled with those, which is honestly one reason to make someone come back to the game. And the gunplay is very smooth to handle in my opinion, with a great set of guns to pick up from enemies. Again, because it's an action adventure, there isn't a giant skill tree system or unlockable abilities, which isn't a bad aspect in other games, but I add on to the point that Uncharted 4 works so well as a more simple game, but still nails in every area it has. The weapons seem to be more varied as you progress, with slightly tougher and different enemies which actually hold new weapons you may not have seen before, which is good, and an area I didn't really notice those years ago. So the enemy types are more varied than you may think with the type of game it is. Nothing crazy, but it's cool there's a difference the more you play, so it doesn't become so boring in terms of the combat. And though there's a great weapon selection, which all feel very good to handle as you shoot, reload or switch, unfortunately you're only allowed to hold 2 in your inventory, and you have to hold a handgun as one of them, where some people might like a bit more. I know I keep coming back to it, but with the action adventure game it is, I also think it's good to not go all out on gunplay, therefore they highlight each area, so it's not so focused on the gunplay. It's a fairly balanced mix of them all, as you can easily switch them out on the go when mid-fight by looting enemies, which is quite fun as it's so chaotic, but maybe just one more would have been a good addition for some. Personally, I was okay with it. It also means they made it a bit more realistic in terms of carrying weight, even though with other moments in the game they just don't care about realism. I mean, how is he not dead? And then there's also the stealth mechanics, which are great as well. The animations are really smooth actually, especially when you jump on people, or even shooting people as you are mid-air. Of course you can pull people down from a high up ledge, and like I said, you can jump on people and attack them, or just take them down when crouching. Quite simple attacks I suppose. I mean, it would have been cool if they implemented the environment a bit more, like, you know, using the objects or the buildings behind them to actually help take someone down. But overall the stealth is still really fun, and then mix that with the gunplay. And lastly, a part that can't go unnoticed that I mentioned briefly earlier is the look of this game and its incredible visuals, which are even more prominent in the new PC version. The Legacy of Thieves, which includes Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy, running at a much higher FPS. The colours and attention to detail in the environment just never gets old. And even with the beta version, it's hard to believe that this game is 7 years old. I think Naughty Dog always kill it with their game's visuals in terms of everything, textures and details, but I think the lighting is just the best. And Uncharted 4 definitely does enhance that, and is needed for the game that it is, you know, filled with exploration and travelling the world. And I think that is where I end my review of Uncharted 4 in 2024. I'm so glad I decided to return to the game after so long, and it's safe to say it's still amazing. Such a fun playthrough, and if you like action adventure, I can assure you that you'll enjoy this one. If you haven't played it, I fully recommend it 7 years later, and if you did enjoy this video or found it helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you like single player games, then that's what this channel is all about. I do videos videos on various games with a playlist of a series I've done in the description down below. Also, if you'd like to support me by becoming a member of the channel and gain access to various perks, then tap the join button below, or there'll also be a link in the description. Thank you for the support and watching until the very end. That was Uncharted 4, and bye bye.